The final piece of this story is I want to talk about something that happened after I gave testimony at that parole hearing. And this will make the hair stand up on the back of your head. So after going down and giving testimony about this case that had happened 25 years ago to the parole board, I left the Kentucky Justice Cabinet, which is in downtown Frankfort near High Holmes and Myra Street. That's where it's at. And when I left there, I come back up and got on US 60 to come out back up toward Lexington to my office when I was done. And as I was driving up US 60, there in Frankfort, past East Main Street, there's a Arby's on the right-hand side, and there's like a McDonald's or something on the other side, and there's a center lane. And as I'm driving up right after that parole hearing, sitting in the center lane in close proximity to this Arby's restaurant.
18 Wheels in a Highway, the murder of Myra Danette Stalbosky, only on the Murder Police podcast. Part 4.
Warning. The podcast you're about to listen to may contain graphic descriptions of violent assaults, murder, and adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
Try this as a capital case because you got your homicide and then you got the aggravating circumstance, rape. So they decided to try as a capital case, and we started the trial. It's Henry County, Kentucky, where we seated a jury out of. And I'll tell you, and I know that you understand this, but seating a good jury on a case means a lot.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
And Mr. Johnson and Mr. True are very wise, and they're very good at what they do. We seated a very good jury for the prosecution. We had a good jury seated. And in about the 8th day of the trial, Mr. Johnson and Mr. True came in and said, well, we're going to plead. And the Commonwealth attorney said, well, we don't have nothing on the table. He says, no, we're pleading guilty to what he's charged with.
Can I go back? 8th day of trial, you testified in that 8 days?
I testified during that 8 days. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that? Tell us what, because you got that A team.
Yeah. They did their job. They did it well.
There we go. That's a polite way of
They did their job. They did it well. And I'll tell you, I respect those guys.
That's an important part. TV again gives us that's what they're paid to do. And I've always said that either we have our stuff together, Sonny, or we don't. And that's what makes the justice system. So I always like to go back to that, because when you're being examined by the prosecution, that's the walk. Yeah. And then they sit down, and good attorneys, I always say, we'll attempt to leave about half our butt cheek in that chair when we stand up to leave. Yeah. And if I ever need an attorney, those are the people, or those are types I'm going to hire.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So hats off. That's how this works. That's how this works.
It is. But, they work me over.
Yeah. And by the way, too, I meant to say, too, the Department of Public Advocacy in Kentucky, DPA, and probably something similar in other states, they're not shabby.
No.
So if we have DPA people listening, I want them to know that they have my immense respect, because I had to be cross-examined by them more than once in my career. And I know the family wanted to get Bill and Guthrie, but I will say DPA is some of the most passionate attorneys I've ever met in my life.
They are. They do a good job.
They do. They really do.
But just the name of Bill Johnson, Guthrie Tree, just made you shudder, like, oh no, they're going to tear me up on it.
I'll share a story. Ray, the DA, Larson, rest in peace. I remember we were talking to him about a case early on in the podcast, and he had a case where Bill Johnson was the defense attorney. And if I remember how Ray said it, because Ray could be very antagonistic, they were in the courtroom before things started, and I think he said he looked over at Bill and said, "Your name is Bill?" And he said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Is that your first name or what you give the client when you're done?" Big Bill. I think they called him Big Bill Johnson. And that was typical, no offense on Bill Johnson, but that was a typical Ray Larson. Ray got the fist up when he went into trial pretty quick and everything. But back to it again, that's what makes the system spin. That's what makes the system spin.
And those guys are hard to find reasonable doubt.
That's it. Yeah.
We want, them defense attorneys, like they look for reasonable doubt, and they really tried hard. And,
they don't have to prove the person's innocent. They just have to find reasonable doubt.
That's right.
Then you cast that into a group of 12 people with a couple of auxiliary jurors, and how many do you need? One.
That's it.
And that's why, coming back to it, jury seating is so important. And there's actually specialists that attorneys can hire that are expert in their field about identifying. But I had to jump in and add that.
Yeah. So the expert that we had in our field of seating a jury for that was not an expert. He was a layperson. He was the sheriff of Henry County who was, would help us.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Ooh, yeah. He
knows everybody.
Yes, I'd never thought about that before, but he's really connected.
And I know that you know this is that on a penalty case, capital case, they do individual voir dire.
Oh yes, yeah. Intensive.
Yeah, each potential witness is examined by themselves, and we finally got a jury seat, 8th day of trial. He entered a plea of guilty to those charges, and
8 days in, they plead guilty.
8 days in the trial.
What was their rationale? Because that's out of the blue.
Well, I can't speak to the rationale, Mr. Jones, but I think I understand. In a penalty case, anything short of a client getting the penalty is victory for the defense. It really is.
Oh yeah.
If you can save somebody's life, even though we don't do much death penalty stuff in Kentucky, we put a lot of people on the
on death row. But
but anyway, that's and we had a judge, Dennis Fritz, great guy, and I get along with him, but they knew that there's no way that Dennis Fritz would give me the penalty on this. So the maximum penalty in the Commonwealth of Kentucky at the time, in early 1997 when it finally went to trial, was 25 years to life. 25 years to life without the possibility of parole. And he waived all of his rights to any appeals, and took 25 years to life, and he was incarcerated.
Okay.
So he's still in today.
He's still in today. So update. He would have become eligible for parole May 1, 2020. May 1st, 2020. April 30th, May 1st, 2020, he would become eligible for parole. I got a call that he was coming up for parole, and from the Commonwealth's, I think it's the Commonwealth's attorney called me, said, hey, since this guy's coming up for parole, do you think the family will come down and give testimony on this? I said, I don't know. I said, I talked to him. I said, let me call him and talk to him. So I called the father and spoke with him and asked him if he wanted to come and give testimony on this. And he says he just didn't feel like reliving it, and asked me if I would mind to go to the parole hearing and give testimony about, what had happened. So parole hearing come. I, along with the Commonwealth attorney for the 12th Judicial District of Kentucky, which is not the Commonwealth attorney at the time. It's a young lady, I can't remember her name, but she showed up, brought the case file from the Commonwealth attorney's office, and we sat in and talked about it. And she and I put on about 2 hours worth of testimony to the Kentucky Parole Board. So at the end, the Kentucky Parole Board could have granted him parole. They could have deferred him for another parole hearing in 5 years. They could have deferred him for another parole hearing in 10 years, or they could have sentenced him to serve the remainder of his life in prison. And they said, no, you're going to serve the remainder of your life in prison. So he's still incarcerated. Unless something changes, he'll be there until he dies in prison. And
that's got to be very effective for the family moving forward, because that's a big frustration we've seen from other people, where repeatedly going to the parole board and making the case why that family member was murdered and why justice. And we've covered some cases where eventually the people that made the murder were timed out and they weren't allowed to go for parole anymore.
Well, or even worse, they get out.
Oh, it's horrible.
And the family has to live knowing that their person's killer is walking around out there.
There was a case on point that just happened from out in the county where I live now.
Yeah. With that 6-year-old boy.
Yes, yeah.
What a travesty.
It's unbelievable.
We may do a little bit on that case because I know people were upset that the guy got out, and now I'm going to hit this real quick. We have legislators in Kentucky that are saying we've got to fix that. I'm going to go back and research who the legislators were that signed the first bill that got him out. That's what ticks me off, is that it's probably not the same ones, but these bad laws are made by people who aren't thinking about the community. That's all there is to it. But maxing these people out. But there's no colloquial thing I've heard for years that the average life sentence in the Commonwealth of Kentucky is 7 years. And I'm like, I think I believe that, because in my career, and I've been out for a long time, I don't think that maybe a couple of the people that I were let up front on cases, maybe a couple are still in the can. And that's weird. Usually they're out in 3 or 4 years, which is, again, bizarre for the family, Wendy, that it's like, what happened? It's just horrific.
What a slap in the face that they get out that quickly. It's almost embarrassing, really.
I remember you talking about you were with Louisville Police, and I was back in the 70s, and I was in their Police Explorer program, and one night I did a ride along, and we were out in Crescent Hill, kind of toward Baxter, and the officer I was riding with pulled into a convenience store. Well, a year or two before, a friend of mine in high school was murdered. He was underage. He slipped out of the house, went into a bar, and a guy snuck up behind him at a pool table and stabbed him in a case of mistaken identity. But he killed Richie. And but I remember pulling in the parking lot, and I remember talking about it with the officer, and he goes, "See that guy with the payphone?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's the guy that killed Richie." Not even 3 years. And it's, Richie was like 16 years old. So without staying down that rabbit hole too much, I'm glad they timed him out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the family will never get over this, but there is that sense. I think that appropriate justice like that helps people start to deal with it in a different way. They, remember the Turpins? I mean,
yes,
is how often they had to go back and what's it like to beg a group of people to do the right thing over and over again? So,
I've had, I was very pleased with what the Kentucky Parole Board done on this case.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They listened. They sat there and listened intently as me and this Commonwealth attorney put on this case before and what had happened.
To your all's credit, you brought what they needed. Because it couldn't happen if you two didn't bring the right testimony for that amount of time to be overwhelming.
There was no way that I was going to say, no, I'm not going to go give testimony.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I'll tell you, the mother of the victim, she said to me, she says, "Promise me you'll see this through to the end."
You couldn't let her down.
I wouldn't.
No.
I would not. The final piece of this story is I want to talk about something that happened after I gave testimony at that parole hearing. And this will make the hair stand up on the back of your head. So after going down and giving testimony about this case that had happened 25 years ago to the parole board, I left the Kentucky Justice Cabinet, which is in downtown Frankfort near High Holmes and Myra Street. That's where it's at. And when I left there, I come back up and got on US 60 to come out back up toward Lexington to my office when I was done. And as I was driving up US 60, there in Frankfort, past East Main Street, there's a Arby's on the right-hand side, and there's like a McDonald's or something on the other side, and there's a center lane. And as I'm driving up right after that parole hearing, sitting in the center lane in close proximity to this Arby's restaurant was an old blue 1978 Ford F-250 with the same kind of wheels, the same kind of tires, the same thing, sitting right there in that middle lane. It's like, we heard you.
Yeah.
We seen you. That was strange. That was odd. I was like, wow.
I think your whole case was full of things. That's why I was fascinated by it, is that...
This case, without any doubt, there was divine intervention. This case may have been solved, but crucial pieces of physical evidence that was used to prove this case would have been gone had it not been for the initial discovery of the truck on the morning of April the 28th, 1995, as it passed back through Oldham County, Kentucky. It's like somebody took me by the shoulder or by the head. Hey, pay attention to this. This made this noise for this reason. Now do your damn job.
Agreed. Good triumphed over evil.
Yep.
And you did, and again, back to your credit, you paid attention and listened. You listened. Because like you said, if we got busy and got distracted and were nonchalant about it. How did it, so you continued to police, and you police today. After that case, even up until the point where you went to the parole board, did that change how you policed, or how you dealt with people, how you looked at things? Did it change you?
That case taught me one very important thing. Listen to your intuition. Listen to your gut. Listen to it. Listen to it. Pay attention. It means something. And it taught me, don't just walk away. Do your job. Somebody's waiting for you. Mm-hmm. Some victim somewhere is waiting for you to do your job. That's what you're paid to do. And if you don't want to do this job and you don't have the intestinal fortitude to move forward with something, you need to get out.
What a great comment. Because one of the reoccurring themes that we're seeing and Wendy's getting exposed to now when we meet victims' families is every now and then, more often than we'd like to see, is where departments and or detectives, I just hate to say it, Sonny, but they're not on board. And they're not communicating with some of these families, and I believe the families, and they're pushing a distance out there. Sometimes that distance happens if the family does some certain things. That's a whole nother show. Very rare. But I'm the same way. It's a humbling experience.
Yes.
Right? It has nothing ego never survives in this business. And you made a good point about how much emotional impact that has, that responsibility to that victim's family, and how it feels when you don't clear one. That there's cases that
Mm-hmm.
That nag me there's cases I think about every day when I'm out walking around about how we didn't clear them yet. Sometimes they do get cleared eventually.
What's the clearance rate on homicides in America today?
Like probably 65% might be the top. Is that like a national average? I think it's in the 60s. Some cities still kind of hum around 80 or 90. But I think it's in the 60s to 70s. And anybody in the audience on YouTube, or just feel free to correct me on that and throw that data out on a comment. I'd love to be accurate on that, but it's probably that, which means there's a lot of people who don't get even that taste of justice to get into a courtroom to see the process started.
I do want to ask, you said that you would tell, and I'm sure our listeners are so eager. What was Chris's recollection of what happened?
Oh, yes, yeah.
I don't have his statement with me. He did render a statement through his attorneys that was obviously crafted by his attorneys. Sure. And the best, I'll paraphrase.
Yeah, just the paraphrase.
He remembers picking the girl up. He says he may have punched her. He remembers waking up on the side of the road hoping he didn't do something bad to the girl.
So he never said, I choked her.
He said, through investigation, all this stuff makes sense. And basically, I'm likely responsible for her death and the rape.
Wow.
God, he's so close to making an Alford plea, but I guess in a capital case, that probably wouldn't be. Lawyers can straighten me out on that too, but that is so close to an Alford plea statement.
Close. It is.
But he never gave any recollection of, he basically never had the balls to sit up and say, this is exactly what I did to this girl.
He said that he had been doing crystal meth, which impaired his ability and judgment to understand.
It does it to me all the time.
But he never told what he did to her.
Yeah. No.
So he's got to throw the crystal meth in there as a mitigator.
Yeah.
Even though legally it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't. Yeah. I got another case going on, attempted murder case I'm working on right now. It's kind of a factor, and I can't talk about it. But
yeah. It's kind of, that just magically appears, right? So.
Wow. Well, that's really horrific. I mean, I don't know I know the family knows what happened, but it's so frustrating that a person can do an act like this and can't even stand there and tell why or what they did. And I don't know that anybody would ever want to know what they did, but it's like, you were horrible enough to do that. At least tell what happened.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things on this case that I haven't talked about, and I'll just touch on in just a minute. So we did a thorough background investigation on Ballou, and he had been charged with a number of offenses that culminated in this one. He had been charged with kidnapping before. He had been charged with arson, serious assault, and so on and so forth. But he was always able to kind of wiggle out of those things down in West Tennessee, where he was from. He was always able to wiggle.
Probably from lying on them daggone log books.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it makes you wonder, you hear of these truck stops and there's women of the night, we'll call them, that meander through there. It makes you wonder if there's other victims that nobody knows of yet.
Well, see, when the VICAP, I know you're familiar.
Right.
When the VICAP was submitted on this case, the Behavioral Sciences Unit,
right,
it was like, hey, we want to talk to this guy, and the FBI and the agents locally, and this way, you're not going to get to talk to him. He's represented. Nobody's going to get to talk to this guy. But there was a number of cases along the route that he trucked, and I really, really hate this term, but I'm going to put it. Some people may refer to them as throwaway victims.
Sure.
A truck stop prostitutes, where the evidence in those cases could not be connected in because the state of decomposition that the bodies were found in at the time, they could not collect any evidence that would connect to anything, and don't know if he was responsible for them or not, but they sure were interested in him. And
I have no doubt. And maybe down the road, science and advancements and things like that. Maybe.
Well, but then it makes you wonder how many other Chris Ballous of the world are there.
Well, if you do a little research on truck driver murders and stuff like that, there's a lot of there's a number of serial killers that were truck drivers and were moving about the country.
Yeah, there's a guy I follow on social media named Phil Chalmers. So Phil, if you're listening, hello. And but Phil has the ability to connect with these guys in prison and build a rapport and interview them, and it's fascinating. And they to the best that they'll deal with Phil, they'll talk to him like they wouldn't talk to somebody that's sworn. And I remember listening to an episode one time, and one of the guys was an over-the-road truck driver, and he said it's actually almost like a subculture. And I think he was exaggerating a little bit, but I don't think he was exaggerating the idea that the crime of opportunity element of that is incredibly good for these people, especially if you pick up or discharge somebody in a more isolated area where you're further away from things.
Right.
But good skilled detective work, way stations, witness statements, and things like phone records can catch up with them. But I would never say that tractor trailer drivers are serial killers. That'd be ridiculous. But
absolutely not.
But at the same time, it's one of those things that when they hunt, that they have a fertile field.
They have a fertile field, and because they move about the United States much, it's hard to track these individuals.
Oh, for sure,
it's hard to track them.
And no witnesses, as long as they don't tell anybody, it'd be that easy. So, one last thing, just to cover kind of briefly, that was interesting in this case. It's my understanding that the trucking company was sued in a civil lawsuit.
Yeah, they were. The trucking company, there was not a finding against the trucking company, but there was a finding against the Ballou. And I don't know how much the amount was against him, but there's a judgment in place against him. So,
and I guess the operating theory, probably from what the light research I did, it was, did the trucking company have any liability in not thoroughly investigating who that is? But that's, as a business owner of anything, I think there's a limit as to how much accountability we can have.
Well, they could have, years prior, he might not have had a record and developed it as it went on. So, you're right. It is hard to hold the business liable.
Those histories aren't really readily available like people think they are. They're
right.
Not, a business can't do a triple I NCIC. That's not going to happen. But I was curious about that. That's just interesting how that did.
I think the allegation in the civil suit against the trucking company was that did they engage in a hiring pattern and practice that allowed this individual the opportunity to commit the crime. I think it was his. But there was a finding against the suspect, a civil finding, it stands today, but not the trucking company. It was dismissed.
Here we go. Well, fantastic work, Sonny.
Fantastic
work.
Yeah,
and that means a lot coming from a guy like you.
Well, yeah, thank you. I'll write you a check for that comment. Exactly. I have to pay Wendy much more to talk kindly about me. But no, seriously, It's just fascinating. Again, I'll say it one more time. The planets align, and there's a divine intervention.
Well, and that Sonny was open to it, and he picked up on all that. You weren't distracted by anything outside. You really honed in on that. And, and if all those things hadn't aligned, Myra's killer still would not be found.
There was a lot of things that I could have been distracted by there in that parking lot on that particular day. But something got my attention.
Yes.
Yeah. I believe in that wholeheartedly.
And I really think that, what you said about seeing that truck in that center lane, I almost think that was a final closing, a thank you.
Hey, we seen, and when I say we, I'm talking about the mother is now deceased, and obviously we seen you, we heard you.
I believe that. I believe that.
I do too.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank
you for having me.
Sonny.
Yeah, it's
you guys are awesome.
But the last comment I'll make is it's been a long time, but it is so fresh on your brain that you sat here without any notes and took us through it perfectly in chronological order.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I lived this thing for.
It's inside your heart.
It is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonny.
Thank you, Wendy.
The Murder Police podcast is hosted by Wendy and David Lyons and was created to honor the lives of crime victims, so their names are never forgotten. It is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lyons. The Murder Police podcast can be found on your favorite Apple or Android podcast platform, as well as at murderpolicepodcast.com, where you will find show notes, transcripts, information about our presenters, and a link to the official Murder Police podcast merch store, where you can purchase a huge variety of Murder Police podcast swag. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is closed caption for those that are hearing impaired. Just search for the Murder Police podcast and you will find us. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for more and give us 5 stars and a written review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcasts. Make sure you set your player to automatically download new episodes so you get the new ones as soon as they drop. And please tell your friends. Lock it down, Judy.
Hey everybody, it's Wendy. In case you didn't know, David finally got off his butt and finished his book, True Crime and Consequences. The book is super educational and talks about the world of true crime and where it meets real investigations. It is perfect for everyone, from true crime fans like myself, to the true crime podcaster or YouTuber, to the amateur detective or web sleuth. And not to leave anyone out, you cops need to read this book too. True Crime and Consequences is available at murderpolicepodcast.com, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, well, pretty much anywhere you'd find a great book like this. So true crime fans, go get your copy today.